Here we go. We'll call the meeting of the Minot City Council to order for today, Monday, June 7th, 2021. It is 5:30 in the afternoon. Appreciate everyone being here. And also a quick reminder for everyone to go ahead and silence your electronic devices so we can keep the distractions down to a minimum. Roll call, please.
Evans.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Padragula.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Number 2 is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 3 on our agenda is the mayor's report, and just quickly going through this, as it was a very, very busy May. We did have a number of different meetings that surrounded the Resilient Together 10 years of the recovery and community. That is the 10th anniversary of the Mouse River flood. There was information push and release today regarding the mosaic and mural that we are looking for the public to contribute pictures of not only 2011, but of course the resilient and recovery aspect of 2011. That is the mural that will be on display the Thursday night prior to the 26th, and then the 26th down at Oak Park the day of. We will have a lot more information coming out in the next few days on that as well. As far as the rest of the meetings go, I won't touch on everything. We did have a couple of military affairs committee meetings as well. I did also have an opportunity to stop down at Minot High and or rather, Minot High actually stopped up here with Lisa Olson and some other folks to take a look at the new City Hall ideas from the Minot High Advanced Engineering class. Some really interesting thoughts that went into that presentation, and great to see some of those kids really putting their heart and effort into some conceptual ideas there. I did also have a virtual presentation for the entire 5th grade classes up at North Plain Elementary, and that did have to deal with flood, as that was what they were studying. Then later in the month, we did have numerous different city council budget sessions, and just for the public's information, and anytime you see any of those city council budget sessions, those were about 6 hours each that we did go through and collectively have presentations from the different department heads and different folks from each department, and walk through kind of their assessment of needs, as of course the entire city managers, staff, and crew put together the budget as we work through the year. On the 19th, we did have a visit from General Weatherington. I did mention this before, Task Force 21, a great conversation as we continue to work that process forward. You'll also see a couple of different flood home acquisitions throughout this report, and did also have the opportunity to wish well to Lonnie Sather, and of course we do wish him well. Our Assistant Fire Chief retired on the 21st. Another retirement actually in the high school ranks. I did stop up to Minot High for Mr. James Ritchie, who spent more than 20 plus years as ROTC. I thanked him for all of his hard work throughout the years. Not to be short on another retiree that retired from education right here on City Council. We'll talk more about that later, perhaps. A couple of City Council meetings as well, Minot Home Flood Acquisitions, Military Affairs Committee, as I mentioned. And then the Downtown Summer of Reading kickoff. I was hoping, I ran out of time to get pictures, but they had a bunch of kids down at Main Street Books, and took the opportunity, as the previous proclamation indicated, spending time reading to kids, is betterment for not only the kids but the community. So that's exactly what we did last Thursday. There were 26 other meetings that I could dive into, but I simply won't, and just ask if there are any other questions on my appointments from the month of May and part of June. If not, I do not have any appointments this month. I do have a couple of slots open that I'll be reaching out to some of the different folks from the City Council as well, from different committees where we have some openings on the Magic Fund Screening Committee, and I'm missing one more here too. Library Board, I think, perhaps. So if anybody does have any ideas or possible people that look at serving on that, please let me know. That is all for my report. I'd turn it over to the city manager.
So as the mayor discussed, it's been a busy couple of weeks as staff is focused on informing the council and the public with regards to the services that we've been providing over the last year, this year, and what we're anticipating coming forward in conversations in the budget this next year. Would remind the council and the public that we do have the facilitation this Friday and Saturday that will take place at the Park Building downtown in their big meeting room there. And those will begin at 8 a.m. on Friday morning, as the council has an opportunity to deliberate on some training and team building, and then some visioning and prioritization efforts that will be incorporated into the budget process by staff going forward after this weekend. I also want to give a brief update too that the airport director hiring process continues to move forward. Application deadlines for that are the end of this month, and we're working with the recruiter on different components and getting that going forward. Be happy to have a council member sit on a panel when we get into the interview process on that, if any of you are interested in volunteering for that. And then finally, I know that this last week we had some requests to the public for conservation of water, including some mandate, and so I thought it'd be appropriate to have our Public Works Director, Dan Jonason, come forward and give the council and the public an update on that event.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jonason.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. A little background on Minot's water system. We pull our water from 14 different wells, 9 wells in our Minot aquifer and 5 wells in the Sundre aquifer. These wells range in volume from producing 500 gallons per minute to 3,300 gallons per minute. So a lot of variation in the wells. Most of them are around 700 to 1,000 gallons per minute. Every year, we have a well service company come in and inspect the wells, do pump testing, check the motors and everything like that. We've been doing that for the last 3 years now, I guess, on that. So we don't neglect our maintenance. We know it's a vital part of our infrastructure, and we pay very close attention to making sure that they're operational. Last week, as you know, we had to start with some conservation efforts. Wells 5 and 6, 2 of our wells that are in our Minot aquifer, were down. Not that the wells couldn't be usable, but the lines from the well to the treatment plant, the transmission line, was put in the early 1900s. We've been having numerous problems with it blowing apart every time we run the wells. So we had a project scheduled, and that was underway to replace part of that line this year where we'd had all the issues. That's why we couldn't run those 2 wells. That project, the contractors agreed to bring in some extra crews and expedite that process to get it put back together. We're hoping by this Friday they will actually have that done, and we'll be able to use wells 5 and 6. Well 14, last Saturday was running fine. We had caught up on I should say a week ago Saturday, on the 29th. We had caught up with the reservoirs, and they were all full, so we shut some of the wells off. When we came to turn well 14 back on, all it did was blow the breakers. We had the well company come in. They came in last Thursday, pulled it, found out that the pump and motor was shot. They had brought another pump with, replaced it, got it going Thursday night, so we were able to use it, and thankfully they did, because our reservoir levels were dropping. We were down to 4 and 5 feet in our reservoirs. So it was getting to be a very dire situation. We had sent out a voluntary, water restriction on Tuesday. It hadn't brought our usage down. We were only able to make about 9 million gallons a day, and we were using 2.5 million gallons, or 11.5 million gallons a day. So we're losing about 2.5 million gallons a day, drawing down our reservoirs, and that's what they're there for, to have extra surplus for this and for fire control. Like I said, Friday morning, we were down to less than 5 feet in our reservoirs. So I felt the need to issue a mandatory restriction on outdoor watering to try to get our usage down. I want to say, I don't know if it was just because the first restriction was voluntary or if people didn't see it, but when we issued the mandatory restrictions, we looked at every venue we could to get the word out. Social media, the news, the chamber was good enough to work with us and send it out on their email serve list. We used the reverse 911 system to notify everyone in the city that's registered on that system. And one thing that kind of really stands out is Shauna Downing from Dakota Outdoor Signs reached out to me Friday morning when she saw this, and she said, "Hey, can I put something out on our billboards for you free of charge to help with that?" So, they didn't have to. I think it shows just what of a great community asset they were to do that for us, and they're continuing to run it, until we're through this crisis. So I really appreciate them doing that. Well E, another, our 4th well that was down. That's been down since March. We had issues with the well. Thine had pulled the pump and motor, and found out that they were both bad. And also, there was several feet of gravel in the bottom of the well. Didn't know what from, so they came in, televised it, and found that there was a hole in the casing of the well. So they ordered the parts. The casing liner was delivered and installed on May 27th, but the pump and motor, we were still waiting for that to come in. It did come in now. Tyne mobilized today. They are working on that well. We're hoping that by end of day tomorrow, they will have that up and running. I don't know if it was the participation of our citizens, seeing the mandatory water restrictions, but over the weekend, Saturday, we saw an increase in our reservoir levels up to 7.5 feet, and believe me, we were delighted to see that, because getting down to 4.5 feet, 5 feet is scary. Biggest thing is, fire, having the capacity if there was a fire or something like that. So we were, ecstatic to see it come up, and that the residents were helping us out during this time. Sunday, we saw the reservoirs overnight. Actually, we were able to get them to full level. So that was great news. We're hoping that if the well repair on E goes well, we can possibly Wednesday or Thursday ease the restrictions, go to a more voluntary restriction, and try to get the folks to water on the appropriate days that our ordinance shows. The people with even addresses on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, odd addresses on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then anyone on Sunday. That helps us balance our load a lot. We don't have high usage. With that, I'll just add that when we were able to shut a couple of our wells off this weekend, we noticed that one more well is decreased in the capacity. It's operating at about half, well 8. So if we think we can keep up with everything with the other wells, we're going to have Tyne pull that one while they're here, see what's wrong with that, see if we can get that one fixed too. But like I said, it's not for a lack of maintenance on our well system. Well 8, for example, that we're having issues with right now, was brand new in 2017. So some of these wells last years. I mean, we have some wells that, other than some maintenance and cleaning of the screens, acidizing, things like that, been in there since the 60s. We have other wells that, they're run a lot, and 2, 3, 4 years we're replacing them. So, like I said, it's not for a lack of maintenance. We maintain them very well, I think. Finally, I'd just like to say thanks to my staff, particularly Mark Paddock, my water plant superintendent. Mark takes his job very seriously. He's been in there working 3 o'clock in the morning till 6, 7 o'clock at night, trying to squeeze every bit of water we can out of our well systems and going through this. And then also Jason Sorensen, my assistant. As you may know, he used to be the water plant superintendent, so these issues when it comes up with water plant and water are near and dear to his heart, so he takes it very serious. I appreciate all the hard work that they have put in these last week to get us through this crisis. With that, Mr. Mayor, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jonason. One of the questions that I received on numerous occasions too from folks, and I honestly didn't have the answer, and I knew you folks were working on getting everything up and running as fast as you could. One of the questions was, do we carry extra components for these wells on hand? I know that it's a mixed match. That I did know, but if you could maybe just kind of give us a little bit of insight into that.
Mr. Mayor, we don't. And the reason we don't is because of the 14 wells, there's probably 12 different pumps in the wells. They're different size, different flow capacity, things like that. So if we were going to have a pump and motor on hand for every well, we'd probably be looking at, and I'm just going off a bit of a guess here, but we'd probably be looking at $3 million worth of inventory that'd be sitting there if we need it. And on top of that, even if we had it, we still have to have a well company come to pull it because out in the Sundre Aquifer, for instance, those wells are 300 feet deep. In the Minot Aquifer, they're 150 to 180 feet deep. So it takes equipment that we don't have to pull those wells out of the ground and work on them.
Thank you, Dan. Of course, the biggest piece of all of this is the backup of what is coming, Northwest Area Water Supply Project, and I have conveyed that to numerous people. Are there any other questions for Public Works Director Alderwoman Evans?
Question from a constituent. So why, when this happens, can't we get water shipped in from somewhere else?
Mayor, Alderwoman Evans, well,
I'm the messenger.
I guess to put it in perspective, if your average tanker were to haul water in, you'd probably get 7,000 or 8,000 gallons. We're using 11 million gallons a day. We were 2.5 million gallon deficit, so.
We would need 1,000 tankers.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'd need a lot of tankers to haul it in 24 hours a day. And, a lot of the area around here relies on us for our water. They don't just have the extra water around, from all the rural water systems, the systems that we serve with NAS, other municipalities that we serve through NAS. So it's not like you can just go pop a well open somewhere and get water and bring it in.
Thank you for illuminating that.
Alderwoman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Dan, I know that the information has been out, but just a reminder to everyone, what is the mandate? What can what can people use water for, and what should they kind of hold off on using water
Sure.
for?
Mr. Mayor, Alderwoman Olson, right now, we are asking that no outdoor water use, which is irrigation for commercial, residential, unless they have new lawns or flowers or things like that, We still want them to be able to keep that alive, but all the existing lawns. We haven't shut off the car washes. So basically we're curbing it with our sprinkler use, you might say, because typically that's what drives our usage up is all the sprinklers when they come on. So right now, that's the things that we're, I guess, mandating, they don't use right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Public Works Director at this time? Appreciate it, Dan, and thank you to the staff as well for all the extra hours that went into this as well and getting the wells moving. So hopefully we'll have some better news by the end of the week and getting everything back together.
Thank you.
Sure. Mr. City Manager, did you have anything else? Okay, thank you. Next item on our agenda is our City Attorney's report.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I submitted a written report, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions for our city attorney on the written report that is uploaded on the website in PDF form? Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the number 6, consider the report of the Planning Commission. We did have 5 different items that the Planning Commission did have forwarded on to us. 3 of them are public hearings, 6.1, 6.4, and 6.5. What are the wishes of the council on the remaining 2? Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the non-public hearing items.
Motion to approve by Alderman Janser on 6.2 and 6.3. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Any discussion on the motion to approve as recommended from the Planning Commission? Any discussion? Final call? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 6.2 is a public hearing, zoning map amendment to the Birch Edition. A public hearing to consider a request from Ackerman Surveying representing Troy Birch for a zoning map amendment from AG Agricultural District to both AG Agricultural District and RR, which is Rural Residential District, on the proposed Birch Edition Lot 2. The recommendations from the Planning Commission to the City Council is: 1, approve a subdivision plat of Outlot 13 of Section 6, Township 154 North, Range 82 West, Birch Edition to be known as Birch Edition Lot 2. And 2, pass an ordinance on the first reading to rezone the Birch Edition Lot 2 from AG to both AG and RR. And 3, adopt a resolution for a future land use map amendment from medium-density residential and low-density residential to very low-density residential. This is, again, a public hearing for anyone to come forward and speak either in favor, in opposition, or neutral to the recommendations. Second call, final call for anyone to come forward for the public hearing to speak in favor, against, or neutral to the recommendations. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council? Alderman Pittner.
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the item with staff recommendations.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to close the public hearing and pass with staff recommendations by Alderman Pittner, second by Alderman Janser. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 6.4, a public hearing, zoning map amendment, Lot 8, Dakota Square, Second Edition. A public hearing to consider request from Jason Loney, Shields All Sport Incorporated, representing Dakota Square Mall, CMBS LLC, for the zoning map amendment from C4 Planning Commercial to C2 General Commercial with a planned unit development, or PUD, overlay, and the purpose of this overlay for the purpose of the building expansion. The property is legally known as Lot 8 of Dakota Square, Second Edition, to the City of Minot, North Dakota. The property located at 2400 10th Street Southwest. The recommendations from the Planning Commission to the City Council is to pass an ordinance on first reading for the zoning map amendment. Again, this is a public hearing for anyone to come forward and speak either in favor or in opposition or neutral to the recommendation to the council. One more call for public hearing on the issue before us. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Alderwoman Olson.
I move that we close the public hearing and pass the item with staff recommendations.
Motion is to approve, close public hearing and approve with staff recommendations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Evans. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yep.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 6.5 is public hearing, zoning map amendment, suburban home, 4th edition. A public hearing to consider a request by Michael Sartwell, the PRGA Properties, St. Joseph's LLC, owner representative and trustee Church of God Prophecy, for a zoning map amendment from R1 Single Family Residential District to C2 General Commercial District on proposed suburban homes, 4th edition. 3 recommendations to the City Council from the Planning Commission is to approve a subdivision plat to be known as the Suburban Homes 4th Edition to adjust the shared property boundary between the 2 subject properties 30 feet to the west. 2, pass an ordinance on the first reading to rezone Lot 2 from R1 Single Family Residential District and C2 the General Commercial District to R1 Single Family Residential District and C2 General Commercial District of a different configuration. And 3, adopt a resolution for a future land use map amendment from low-density residential to commercial. Again, this is a public hearing for anyone to come forward and speak either in favor or in opposition or neutral to the recommendations or the issue that is before us. Last call for comments on public hearing on the issue that is listed on your screen as 6.5. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mayor,
Alderman Ross.
I move we close the public hearing and approve the staff recommendations.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Ross to close the public hearing and pass with staff recommendation, second by Alderman Pittner. Is there any discussion from the council? Any discussion from the council? Final call. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Tadrigula.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us to our next area of our agenda. This is the consent items. We have 7.1 through 7.11 for consideration. Are there any individual items that need to be pulled for individual consideration? Otherwise, they will be passed with staff recommendations. If not, I would look for a motion.
Move approval on all of the items.
Second.
Motion to approve from Alderwoman Olson with staff as recommended, second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Last call for discussion. Seeing none, motion is to approve consent items 7.1 through 7.11 as recommended. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Tadrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us to our action items section of our agenda. The first one, 8.1, is the encroachment permit, First Street, Axel Parklet. The Axel Group wishes to install a Parklet streetery on the western side of their property to serve customers at Prairie Sky Breads. The recommendation approval of the right-of-way encroachment permit application submitted by Axel Group LLC for installation of a Parklet streetery at their building building at 3 First Street Southeast is the recommendations to the council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Janser to approve, second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Alderman Ross.
My only question, Mr. Mayor, is when we initially approved this project, I wasn't sure, or I may be confused, which is easy, that these were going to be administrative approvals, that they wouldn't have to come in front of the council? Am I wrong in that, or?
Very good question. I would either look to our city attorney, our community development director, or
Anyone?
anyone that wants to come
Anyone who-
forward on what the approval was previously.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a hybrid, Mayor and members of the council. It's kind of a hybrid because encroachments do have to come to the city council. So there are two other elements that are involved in the approval. One is a building permit, and that's totally administrative. And then the other piece is an approval through the planning staff for outdoor dining. And again, that's administrative. But the encroachment piece, as it's set up, comes through the council. All encroachments come through you, and that's why it's a hybrid.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Any further questions there?
Well, I thought the encroachment portion was probably taken care of with our approval. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I thought it was taken care of to where all they'd have to do is go through the planning and get the planning approval and have everything planned, and we wouldn't have to see every single one of these. Not like they're going to be lining up, but I mean, it's something that I just think it should be handled administratively, and I thought it should have been.
Right, because we know there's going to be an encroachment when we have yeah, that's good.
Mr. Mayor, our city engineer, Mr. Meyer.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Ross, currently in our Chapter 28 Streets and Public Grounds Ordinance, we don't have the ability as staff to issue a temporary encroachment. We're currently rewriting that chapter, and we basically have it rewritten. It's going through internal staff reviews right now. In the future, we would have a section that would address something like this, where on a temporary basis, as staff, we'd be able to approve these sort of things. But because the language doesn't exist for us to do that, this part has to come in front of you. But that'll change in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Lance, would it be like what we do with?
Alderman Evans.
Oh, sorry. Would it be like what we do with the approvals for like raffles and stuff, where Kelly or Chief Klug do that, and then we just see, like on a monthly basis, we have to like sort of approve them after the fact?
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Evans, I don't even think it would get to that level. I think it
Okay.
would just be a staff approval. If it meets the criteria that we have set up within our approved policies, we would just approve it.
Great, that sounds great. I hope it happens quickly.
Any further questions for our city engineer? Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
Alderman Ross, I think that is our answer as it is working through the system to change or overhaul to be able to do that. Sure. So thank you for the clarification on that. Any other questions or discussion? Final call. Motion is to approve on 8.1. Please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 8.2 is the Renaissance Zone Final Approval Project M-94. At its regular meeting on May 20th, 2021, the Renaissance Zone Review Board recommended final approval of the application for a Renaissance Zone project filed by Credence Properties 3 LLC, represented by Kevin Black, for a 5-year property tax exemption, including improvements and land on property located on 21 East Central Avenue. Addition East, lots 19 and 20, Block 19. The City Minor Council passed, or rather issued the conditional approval on this project July 6th of 2020.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Evans. Discussion on the motion to approve. Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Motion is to approve the recommendations that grant the final approval to the Renaissance Zone Projects M-94. Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yep.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 8.3 is the ordinance amending Section 9-6 in Chapter 9 of the City of Minot Code of Ordinances. The Inspection Department is proposing an ordinance change to improve the safety of the new residential buildings as it relates to the fuel-fired appliances in future installations. The main goal of this ordinance will be to protect the homeowners and neighbors from possible code violations and safety hazards when roughing in for a fuel-fired appliance, but not installing the appliance until a future date. The recommendations to the City Council was to pass the proposed ordinance on first reading, amending Chapter 9-6 of the City of Minot Code of Ordinances.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion or questions on the motion?
I just had a question.
Alderwoman Evans.
Is Luke here? Can't. Oh, it's just is this a consistent change with other jurisdictions? Like, has this been a problem we've seen here in Minot that is addressing? Like, what caused this change?
I got it. Mr. Mayor, Alderwoman Evans. This is my first time, so take it easy on me.
No problem, no.
Could you reword the question again for me,
But
please?
what, was there, why did we do this? Was there a problem? Were other communities doing it?
No, we've had a lot of new buildings going up. Brand new houses will, for example, like a unit heater will go in your garage, you'll build a house, and then a month later in the middle of winter, someone will go and get that unit heater put in, and there'll be no venting going through the roof. And a lot of times we have a lot of issues with them going in the middle of winter, trying to go through roofs, going out the sidewalls and stuff, yep.
So that will address this and.
That's hopefully, yep.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. You did awesome. We're going to
you.
call you up all the time now.
Please don't.
One follow-up question, perhaps. I'm going to be easy on this. Is there any additional cost in terms of permitting, any additional?
There is none. There might be minor impact as far as contractor right away paying for the venting as soon as they do it. But in the long run, it's actually going to be a little cheaper because you're going to have your contractor come in. They're going to do it before everything's sheetrocked, before attics are insulated, stuff like that. So in my opinion, it'll be cheaper in the long run.
It's an even better answer. Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to approve? Any further discussion? Motion is to approve the recommendation. City Council pass the proposed ordinance on first reading, amending Chapter 9.6. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 8.4 is the Craftsman License Ordinance Resolution. The attached ordinance will amend the Code of Ordinances by changing the language to allow the City Council to set the craftsman fee by resolution. The attached ordinance also rescinds language in the Code of Ordinances allowing gas fittings, HVAC installers to apply for temporary work permits. The two recommendations to the City Council is to approve the proposed ordinance on its first reading and to adopt the attached resolution upon approval of the ordinance amendment on the second reading.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Ross. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Final call for discussion. Motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Madrugula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 8.5 is the Budget Amendment City Economic Development Activities. November 5th, 2018, the City Council approved the second reading of Ordinance Number 5323, which provided the use of a portion of the first penny sales tax for use for the City of Minot Economic Development Activities to be approved by the Minot City Council. The proposed budget amendment would appropriate the funds available for the City of Minot Economic Development Activities that has not been encumbered. This would allow these initiatives to proceed. The recommendation is the full City Council was to approve the attached budget amendment to appropriate funds for the use of the city economic development activities.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Evans. Discussion on the motion. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. Just had some thoughts written down, and I'll share those with the council. I've been meeting with staff and, more importantly, local businesses for months in regards to this item. Together, we've worked to develop a comprehensive approach to address some of the hurdles facing, in this case, particularly downtown. Now, I may respect planning, but we can't plan forever. We need to act on the plans. American author Napoleon Hill stated, "Plan your work and work your plan." That is where we are as a community, as a council, and where we find ourselves. We have planned our work. We have paid for the studies to identify what to do, such as the IEDC report. We have hosted numerous white paper meetings in regards to economic development and action items in the IEDC report. We have made the necessary ordinance changes, such as the one that was just referenced in 2018 to allow the city to take a more active role in economic development. We have hired an economic development specialist in Jonathan Rosenthal to help us navigate the waters of economic development. Now is the time to work our plan. As our city manager pointed out in the workshop here 2 weeks ago, the city of Minot has resources to do what it needs, but it needs to allocate the funds to support those efforts. It's important that every department has the funds necessary to carry out their job effectively and efficiently. That's true for public works, engineering, police, fire, as well as economic development. Downtown merchants have been waiting for the city of Minot to address downtown issues for a long time. Changes in our administration and political changes cannot be treated as resets for this initiative. It's like when a relief pitcher comes in the 7th inning. The game doesn't start over. We pick up from where we are. Anyone reading the plans for Minot and the studies that have been done will see that they all say the same thing in a different variation. Downtown is really important. It's the heart of the city. Downtown buildings need to be renovated, whether it be through a facade improvement or a combination of public and private investment. More people need to live downtown. This is a model that's been used across the country, and it works. We as a city council can ignore those studies, or we can pay for another study that says the same thing or something similar in a different way, or we can act on what we already know. We have taken some steps already. We are working with city wayfinding signage program. We've also started the Parklet and Streeter program, which we just saw get passed earlier this evening, the very first one. We all applauded the downtown businesses that have themselves united to make Thursday evenings special all summer long and organize for a better future. They have faced a year of COVID, and before that, years of infrastructure improvements throughout downtown. But they have also faced long-term decline in the number of retail businesses and the sheer age of the buildings. There are too many vacant, underutilized buildings, especially on Main Street. We need more retail businesses, and we need to push to renovate and maintain those buildings. These conditions will not turn around without help. It will not turn around without the commitment of this city council. Our first step which I believe is the right step, is to renovate Main Street. Let's push for an impact that will, over time, draw in more private investments. Let's show the way. We need to follow this effort with a private-public partnership to renovate downtown housing, to fill the long vacant upper stories with young people, empty nesters, college students, and everyone who likes living near downtown and the nightlife and restaurants and the arts. We envision a skyline program in the future that will take and expand the local tax base by increasing the value of residential and other properties that have been vacant and long ignored. When coupled with a facade improvement project, renovated housing can recoup public investment in less than a decade and pay off well into the future. Just a few short weeks ago, I spoke with a retiring City of Minot employee, and they expressed their appreciation to the council and their commitments we've made to ensure employees feel appreciated and supported by making the City of Minot a place where they want to work and are proud to work. And then they proceeded to say, but your job is not done. Please continue to make Minot a place where people want to live and play as well. And take the steps forward in improving the quality of life for everyone. Our commitment to making these investments will pay off. The City of Minot is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into flood protection. And in 2018, when I ran for City Council, I stated the city needs to ensure that we not only invest in the flood walls that will protect us, but we must invest in what we are protecting behind them. By making these investments, we will help keep our young people interested in living in Minot, staying in Minot, working in Minot, playing in Minot. We will help attract and retain high-level employees and professionals to our community, as well as add to the diversity of our city. Investing in economic development will improve the quality of life, and it has to start here. It's time to work the plan. And again, these are just some of my thoughts that have been collected through this process. And these dollars, I understand, it can be a big sticker shock to some people. We have. And I can stand corrected by anyone, but we have, the way that the ordinance is read, these can go towards three different things. Flood protection, which is I might be shortchanging it, hundreds of millions of dollars. We can put more money into the Magic Fund, which the balance sits around $9 million. Or we can take this money and invest this taxpayer money into the community and try to make it better. It's an easy decision for me to support this. And I look forward to the beginning of the small singles and base hits that we can accomplish with investing in economic development. I think it's time to stop having a study done and then another study that says the same thing over and over again, and I don't know what we're trying to accomplish by doing that. It's time to act. It's time to put some plans into motion. It's time to stop discussing these items. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion. Alderwoman Evans.
I am in support of this. I think it's a great idea. To be sure, I don't think, Paul nor I believe this is the end-all for economic development. We know economic development is a huge project in this city. It includes not only improving our downtown, but the things that, Mr. Stewart talked about in his presentation and things that John McMartin has talked about, getting that port, being everything it can be, and big box stores and retail. This is one component of it. None of us, I think, believe this is going to, be the end to the economic development this council is committed to. But I think it's a great program. Mr. Rosenthal has brought some great ideas to fruition, and now we want to provide him the funding to kickstart this and get some things going. And hopefully, there'll be much more in the future. But I think this is a great start, and we're going to see, important things happening with these tax dollars.
Further discussion on the motion.
I have a question
Alderman
for
Ross.
Mr. Rosenthal. How do you foresee this facade program with the funding that you got? Just, it looks like about $1 million. How do you see that working? How do you disperse the money? Is it grants? Is it loans? How's it, or are we just going to give the Downtown Association $1 million and say, fix your storefronts?
Mayor and members of the council. No, I don't see just giving it in lump sum. I see a number of individual applications for review. It would be, I see it, I hope I'm.
Oh, no, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Forgivable loan The reason to do a forgivable loan in particular is to have continued accountability over time. If you were to give a grant and say, okay, you're good, you've kind of met the conditions, and you have kind of a one-year thing, people can then kind of stop following the rules. You want long-term accountability. One thing that's kind of a small thing in its own way, one of the accountabilities that I would want is that if the downtown group has decided on their own, not from city council, have decided that we want extended hours, let's say Thursday and Friday night, we're going to be open till 8:30 or 9 o'clock, that you have to abide by that. That's part of a condition, and I think a pretty small but reasonable condition. But also that you continue to maintain the property or you pay back. But to be more specific about the facade improvement program, although that's would be something that would be funded by this, and you had a chance to sit down with me and talk about it in general terms, that I will be back before you with all the specifics of that, that no money is committed to that program until you've had a chance to look at that program and go through all those specifics, the devil's in the details, and we would make certain that you have a chance to review that. We've spent a lot of time discussing this issue with the Downtown Business and Professional Association, but also individual property owners, and Mr. Pittner, as a community development liaison, sat through a good number of meetings. On a kind of follow-up, the mayor also had sat through some of the meetings. So we've had a chance to discuss that, and I certainly want to go through those details with everyone on the council. But in terms of where this money is committed, I think that there are things beyond that. This is not going to cover, for instance, I think the thing that will eventually drive property taxes in a very positive direction is getting those upper stories. This is dealing with the facade, which is the front of the building that we're talking about. But that's very important. But getting those upper floors occupied and renovated, generally, if you put $1 million into renovations, and talking about working on a loan program, $1 million invested will yield about $1 million in tax base, and every $1 million in tax base yields between $12,000 and about $15,000 in new taxes every year. So that money should come back to the city in short order because of those investments in the future. In terms of the variety of places where the money would be spent, though, is we're talking about doing a retail study. There needs to be money for that and other kinds of things that come up that we need to invest in terms of looking at the tools to properly analyze what we're doing and guide some investments and actions on the city's part. We need money for grants, the matching funds for grants. The federal government is coming up with a bunch of new money. They're about a month behind already in terms of putting some of that money out through the Economic Development Administration. But when that money becomes available, one of the things that we really want to look at, we're talking with a hospital now about doing a very careful reuse study for the downtown properties. Although they will continue to use some of the properties, we'll take a very close look at which ones will continue to be used, which ones will transition eventually to other uses, and those which immediately would become available. But we need to take a look at the physical setup of the buildings, the value of the buildings, the possible reuse of the buildings, and very importantly, what any environmental concerns. So by budgeting for all these things, we're giving ourselves the flexibility to address these things. If in an ideal world, at the time I was hired or anybody was hired into this position, we would have funded some of these things, but there would have been no way of knowing which way it was heading since it was a brand-new position. So I think what I appreciate what Mr. Pittner is doing is trying to make certain that I don't have to wait till the next budget next year, and then I can begin acting on some of those things. And there are things that the city manager has identified, and we'd be able to address those as well.
Continue.
Couple follow-ups. So just to be clear, you just said that the facade is not going to have as much of impact on property tax evaluations as redoing the upper floors and turning those into apartments.
That's the truth of it, yes.
Okay. Who's going to approve the applications and who's going to approve the designs?
Well, again, I'm happy to handle the details in, great detail. Tonight was a budgeting exercise, if that's a proper choice of words.
I mean, in your best case scenario.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm happy to answer. I just meant I'm going to cover this in great detail in about 2 weeks. There'll be a staff review of everything that's going on, a submission of a proper design from the applicant, and then my thought was that it would be reviewed by the Renaissance Review Board. It would be an additional assignment to the board. With an appeal, by the way, to the city council if there was an issue.
One final question, I just wrote this down. When you talk about improvements to those buildings and those businesses down on Main Street and down in the Renaissance Zone, how come those types of improvements wouldn't fall under Renaissance Zone type of funding?
Again, through the mayor and to members of the council. The fact is, it's just not enough. Those are appropriate. If you actually take a look at the way in which the investments were made over the last 20 years, a good number of buildings have been dealt with, but they didn't really take on the whole building as they might have. We're looking at a property that we had an initial application, and we had to say, this building, the previous owner had applied, there's a one-time application for any building. And they had done, it was application number 6 of the city, roughly 20 years ago. And somebody replaced some flooring and did some painting and a few other things. I'll call it Band-Aid kind of work. It's unfortunate, but they qualified. I think today, I think the Renaissance Board would take a tougher look at it. But again, new experience, and there simply isn't the money to really do the facade improvements that are necessary anymore. And again, the program has been kind of, if you pardon me saying it this way, used up with previous work.
Thank you. I just a couple of thoughts just to kind of wrap up.
Before we do
go
that,
ahead.
perhaps we
Yep.
should, with Mr. Rosenthal at the podium here. Any further questions for Mr. Rosenthal? Alderwoman Evans.
Can you tell us more about the leakage study and the data analysis, what that is?
Well, I'd certainly ask the city manager to involve himself in this because he
Great,
has
yeah,
been
whoever
involved.
can answer
Mr.
that.
City
That's
Manager.
okay.
I don't want to delay Alderman Ross's comments, but if you recall, a couple weeks ago when I gave the presentation to the council with regards to economic development, I talked about the need for us to make greater efforts when it comes to retail recruitment. And that would include attending the international conference of shopping centers, conferences, and those types of things, having the data the analysis through cell phone data and credit card data on where my notions are spending their money. Is my notions the right term? I've heard that a couple of times. Alderman Patrick was looking at me kind of weird when I said that, but anyway, figuring out where that money, so how much money do we have here and where's it going? Is it staying local or is it going out to other communities? That's what we consider a leakage analysis. So if it basically defines a retail trade area, which would be bigger than Minot itself. But within that retail trade area, how much spending capacity is there? And then how is that money flowing with regards to specific demographics? So if we take a grocery store, for example, within that retail trade area, you may be spending, you may have $120 million being spent on groceries, but maybe only 50 million of that is actually being spent locally. That difference is being spent in other communities. That's data I can take to a retail conference and talk with a grocery company and say, we're leaking $80 million a year in grocery sales, and I have real data to prove that with. And so, in essence, that's what that's doing, but also in the process of doing an RFQ, of selecting a consultant to help us with that. Not only will they do that analysis, but they'll have those relationships built, that they'll know the business plans of those different retail companies. And when we're reaching those thresholds to meet their business plans, and then have the contacts to be able to put us in front of them at these conferences or via video conference and those types of things, to begin having those conversations so that Minot can tell its story of why we're a good fit for them, why they should come do business here, because we have a demand for it that's not being met.
And if I could just emphasize just one other point related to that, that would be a citywide study. So it wouldn't just be downtown. It would affect downtown, but it'd be all along Broadway and all the other commercial centers in the city.
Thank you. Sounds like a great.
Further questions for Mr. Rosenthal?
Just one quick follow-up real
Okay.
quick, because I don't want this to be confused in the public. None of that money is being used as an incentive to bring retail businesses here. That's to get the data, the analysis, and begin having meetings with them. That's not trying to provide a financial kickback or something for one of those retail companies to come locate here. That's strictly for us to do our work and tell our story.
Last call for questions for Mr. Rosenthal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Alderman Ross, back to you.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. I'm going to support this. I support it. I want to. My heart wants to support it more than what I'm saying right now. I've just got just some concerns that I'm going to be looking out for, and others that have approached me are going to be looking out for. Is that, I know downtown is the heart of the city. I know downtown is the heart and soul, and it seems like for the last 3 or 4 weeks, 3 or 4 council meetings, there's been somebody pounding the gavel and pounding the podium, asking for more money and more money and more money. I personally just don't see downtown hurting as much as what it sounds like. We've got great investment downtown. It's bustling downtown. And once again, the city's throwing $13 million into a new city hall downtown after millions of dollars of infrastructure downtown. And I don't want us as a city to have our blinders on to where all we see is downtown and downtown. We are, forgivable loans. You say potato, I say grant, you say forgivable loans. It's giving money away on something that is not gonna. I kind of look at it like this: a facade program is like facelift. Facelift is an elective surgery. Insurance is not going to pay for it. We need to focus on the inside. And once again, Mr. Mayor, we went through 18 hours over the last couple of weeks of meetings with every department talking about what they want, what they need. And looking at what they need compared to a facelift for private business downtown, it just doesn't sit well with me. And, it's going to pass, but once again, I think we've got bigger. I don't think we're completely out of the woods yet with the effects of the pandemic. I'd like to. I'm going to ask Mr. Lakefield to sometime give us. We've had budget amendments after budget amendments after budget amendments. I just wonder how many budget amendments we've had and where our reserve sits. with all of this. And yeah, once again, let's just not get our blinders. I'm all about downtown. I love the activity going on downtown. It's just not in a dire position that everybody thinks it is. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff happening downtown. I just think $1 million could go help another department a heck of a lot better than not having any return on an investment. Thank you.
Before I turn to you, Alderman Pittner here, I'm going to have a few words with this as well. As we take a look at downtown, there is a lot going on, but there's also a significant big looming issue that is coming with the vacation of the Trinity buildings, and no one has stepped forward with any kind of reasonable understanding of what is going to happen to one of our largest buildings, the largest building downtown, with many others. There is no plan. And we've seen what happened with one of the other largest buildings downtown when there was no plan. The Big M building, we sat and went rounds on whether or not the city was going to be the savior of one of the biggest landmarks downtown. The other question we have to ask, is the Trinity Hospital going to be the next blackout vacant building? So, $1 million isn't going to be the fix-all for a lot of folks. Former city leaders also decided to spend a lot of money on community facilities and granted millions and millions of dollars into community facilities. And I'm not talking down one bit about the effort that went into Minot State University bubble or some of the assets with Minot Rhine or the YMCA, and I could go on and on and on. So it is the potato of what we're going to invest in. And if it comes down to being able to have a vibrant area where we know we have significant challenges coming in the very near future because there is no plan right now with Trinity to reuse those buildings. So I think it is important that we don't turn our blinders on and say we've got a good start, but we got to shift and pivot. I think it is, as our city manager had pointed out, when we take a look at economic development, to have a big, broad understanding, a big view, and this is a major component of it. Many of these folks are not going to invest $80,000 or $100,000 or $150,000 into a facade program if they're not going to renovate the upstairs and actually get some return of investment on that, on the ROI. So I look at it as I believe it was Mr. Walker that was here last time talking about community facilities with one of our economic development sessions, perhaps just a reinvention of a small portion of that. I'm going to support it. It's certainly, I think, a lot more holistic than just downtown. But in many ways, we still have our significant challenges with the Trinity complex in the very near future. Further discussion, Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree with everyone's comments, whether it be for or against or concerns. That's why we're elected, is to raise concerns and to try to poke holes in it and see if we can still make sense of it. So I appreciate all the comments. One clarification, this is not property tax dollars. This is sales tax dollars. This is sales tax dollars that we allocated back in 2018. So this couldn't be spent, like I said, on anything but flood protection, economic development, or go into the Magic Fund. This couldn't go to Public Works. This couldn't go to police. This couldn't buy pens or papers or a new copier. Those are the three options we have. And in my opinion, this is where we see the greatest return of our investment or potential return on investment. And again, a facelift, I agree, the insurance is going to pay for it. But if we think of it as a house, and if every single house on my street is nice and painted and looks nice, there's probably some resale value there. There's probably somebody that wants to move in my neighborhood. But if everything is run down and dilapidated and is fallen apart and not well kept and occupied by maybe not the most savory of characters, probably not a very good neighborhood that I would want to live or invest in. So when we talk about those Trinity buildings going vacant, if we have a vibrant downtown and it looks attractive and it is bustling, more than it is starting to become, we've put ourselves in a position to win. If we have an investor come to downtown and want to take a Trinity project on or a Big M project on, and it looks beautiful downtown and it's vibrant and there's parklets everywhere and there's restaurants and retail, that's where the investment comes in. This is a long range. This isn't a one-year project. Economic development, this is the first domino to fall on the city's investment of many dominoes. So again, I appreciate all the comments, the public engagement, but I did want to make sure that was clear. This is sales tax money that we've been collecting since this ordinance was changed. This is not property tax dollars. So just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Further discussion on the motion? Any, Alderman Janser?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support this because I think it adds a dimension to economic development that does in fact broaden what we're doing. I think that one of the things that was identified as a gap is a certain kind of support for existing businesses. And while we'll see what the success of this particular approach is, I think this does address that for some of these downtown locations. And so for that reason, I think we need to move ahead. And although I don't disagree with Alderman Ross entirely that there is some good activity going on, I think that this is something that can add a dimension that will help with what's already happening. So I'm going to support this.
Final call for comment. Alderman Patagula.
I'm not quite as pessimistic as my brother Tom, but I will also support it because for several reasons. I guess first of all, the money isn't doing us any good sitting in the bank. We've heard repeatedly about the need to support our own, to shop local, to build local, to invest local. Where I get a little queasy is in terms of accountability, and I'm looking forward to Mr. Rosenthal bringing policies and procedures to us. I look forward to the Renaissance Zone Committee, which I think has done a very good job over the years, vetting these programs, looking at these applications very carefully. One of the other things that makes me be supportive of it is that we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money in the past few years looking at economic development. And what we've done in the past has sort of worked, but I think it's become apparent to all of us, or most of us at least, that we need to try new things. I'm a little bit uneasy about that, and that's not because I hate change or anything like that. But there are challenges, so I think a lot of it will be in the execution. I guess the big thing that makes me want to do this, support this, is we've been hearing again from the experts. We've hired significantly, we've beefed up our staff significantly in the area of economic development. Our new city manager, one of the reasons he was hired was because of his background in that area. And when we look at these experts, people who are coming in from outside, not just people who have been here their entire lives, but when people coming in outside saying, look, this is how it's done in other places, this is what we suggest. One of the biggest things in my reasoning for supporting this is the IEDC team that came several years ago, made several visits, spent days here, and interacted with the entire community and the entire region even, reaching out to the tribal areas out west. And their expert consensus was, this is one of the things you need to be thinking about and need to start doing. So I have some hesitance, and a lot of it is like Tom says, accountability. I think downtown is not out of the woods by any means, and as Sean said, we're going to have some real issues with Trinity moving, and we're going to have to come up with some plan for the Midwest Federal Building. That is not a pleasant thing. So all things considered, I will support this. I think it's a step forward. It's certainly very different from what we've done, and there are always chances, there's always risk. I think at this point, given what we're hearing from other people, given what we've heard from people locally, I think it's worth taking that chance. So I'm going to keep my eyes open, but I think it's time to try something different, and again, based on good judgment and based on lots of cogitating and ruminating, I think it's worth doing. So I'm going to support it.
Motion is to approve with a second. Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Number 9 is personal appearances. This is an opportunity for anyone to come forward and speak on any item that is or is not on our agenda. Just ask that if you do come up, that you state your name and your city of residence. Second and last call for personal appearances. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 10, which is the miscellaneous and discussion items for council. Are there any items for the good of the order that need discussing this evening? Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I would just point out that there's a liaison committee meeting this Wednesday, if anybody's interested in attending.
Thank you. And I would also just remind for the opportunity of the public that there is a couple of meetings from the full city council. Perhaps, Mr. City Manager, as you've helped facilitate, if you have a very brief kind of PSA for the public on what is coming up for council activities Friday and Saturday. To put you on the spot, sir.
Sure. So as I stated underneath the city manager report, we will have a facilitator here Friday and Saturday with a team of experts to come in and help do some team building exercises, some role education discussion exercises, defining the role of council, city manager, staff within our organization, community, those types of things. And then do some visioning processes and strategic prioritization processes with the council that staff can then use in the budget process going forward. Those will happen at the Park building downtown. And it is an open public meeting, so if any of the public or the media would like to attend, it is, the agenda is published on our website. But we'll have an expert facilitator that specializes in helping communities go through this process, as well as some local government experts, both academic and in a practitioner aspect, here to help advise the council and help move through some of that conversation that I think will help us move up to a new level of production and cooperation going forward as an organization and as a community.
Appreciate it, sir.
I just want to, when you were doing your report, you said it starts at 8 on Friday, but I think it really starts at 9, correct?
I'll get the schedule out to you. I'm short a
It says
secretary
9
this
o'clock
week.
on our website in the agenda. So if that's changed, we just need to make that change.
Yeah, I'll have to verify that. There was some issues with the arrival of the facilitators coming in.
Let us know so we're not late.
All else fails, the agenda posted on the website is the truth, so.
Okay.
Just one last item then, as we're coming up here on the 26th, for council and for the public. I'd been, 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to talk with Mr. Dumel at 1:30 in the morning as he called from Moscow. Ended up playing a fairly significant part in a fundraising effort with the Black Eyed Peas, and we're working diligently, and I think he's clearing his schedule well enough that hopefully one last item falls into place that he's here as well for the 10th anniversary to help kind of mark the resilience aspect of that event. So that's just kind of the first push on that. We'll hopefully have confirmation within a few days of that, because he certainly helped bring more of a nationwide audience and understanding, and that was also something that not too distant afterward faded because of other circumstances. But so, if anybody is wondering, any other items? If not, we are in line for adjournment. Motion by Alderman Pittner. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Ross. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.